The art of finding yourself and letting go. Being surrounded by beautiful art pieces always feels like heaven to me. I think it's what inspired my love for art. I'm at a very popular art gallery which is having one of its annual art shows. As I'm looking around, I bump into a tall, black-haired, attractive man. "Fancy bumping into you here," he says to me. He has these bright blue eyes that look full of life and this warm aura about him. After a few minutes, I shake my head and frown a bit. "Do I know you?" I ask him, looking at him up and down. "I'm new to this city. I just moved here a few weeks ago to open up my own gallery and actually showcase my own art pieces." He chuckles and tells me that he has never seen me in his entire life. "So why did you say that?" I asked him, completely confused. "To break the ice, and also you seem rather lonely walking around here by yourself," he says to me. "Well, I am very introverted and prefer to be alone. Interacting with people gives me so much anxiety. My high school counselor told me my parents that I am socially awkward and that I would probably outgrow it, which never happened because I'm still socially awkward. I'd rather be alone in my room, busy painting, than going out with a huge group of people." "Isn't that man over there handsome? Looks like he works out too," he says to me. It takes me a minute to realize that this stranger I bumped into is still socializing with me. I turn my head to look over at the guy he's talking about. I mean, he's good looking, but I'm not into men, which makes me question if this stranger guy is. "Why are you admiring a guy?" I ask him. He takes a sip of wine from his glass and flashes me a huge grin. "Men are more my type than women, to be honest with you," he says to me. I gasp in shock and proceed to ask him what does he mean by that statement. He chuckles and responds by saying, "I'm attracted to men, buddy. In simple terms, I'm gay," he says confidently to me. I start to feel a bit of discomfort. My parents have always lectured me about how wrong and sinful homosexuality is. And where I am from, you hardly know or see anyone that is gay. "How can you say such out loud and with such confidence?" I ask him. He raises his eyebrow at me. "Did I say anything wrong?" "I just told you my sexuality. It's not like I murdered someone," he says. I keep quiet for a moment, trying to digest what he just said. "There's nothing wrong with being gay," he sternly says. "How can you say that when the Bible clearly states that it is a sin?" I say to him. He rolls his eyes and takes a huge gulp of his glass of wine. "I get it. You're one of those judgmental Christians," he says to me. I can tell that his whole mood has shifted. He is no longer his cheerful, funny self. He actually looks very annoyed. "How is it being judgmental when it's in the Bible, and it's even talked about in church?" I ask. He slightly coughs and straightens himself up. "Tell me this, buddy. The Bible also states that people should not judge, yet the only thing you judgmental Christians do is judge everyone, except for yourselves. I mean, don't you guys get tired of trying to act like you're perfect when clearly no one is perfect?" he says to me. He actually has a valid point. I never thought about it like that. No one is perfect, but that doesn't change the fact that homosexuality is wrong. "And not to judge you, but you are the only fooling yourself, mate," he says to me. I look at him in confusion. Hopefully, one day you'll get tired of living the lie that you are currently living. It's better to live your truth and be true to yourself, instead of trying to hide behind Bible scriptures, he says to me. As I am about to respond, he just walks away, leaving me utterly confused by the statement that he just made. What makes him think that I'm not living my truth? What does that even mean? I can't believe I'm allowing a stranger to confuse my mind. I continue looking around the gallery, but the stranger's last words keep echoing in my mind, that I'm unable to fully indulge and enjoy the rest of the art display. I decided to head home and get some rest. By tomorrow, I probably would have forgotten about this conversation with the stranger. It has been a week since I attended the art show. I'm looking at possible gallery options with this kind of older woman named Caroline, who is an artist herself. She owns 2 galleries, and I met her at the art center in town. We were looking around the space, and it's absolutely perfect. I wasn't looking for something big and fancy, but something small, because I aim to show off my art and also sell it. "Caroline, the space is perfect. I'm sold," I exclaimed to her. She smiles at me. I still remember the day I opened my first gallery. "It was the happiest day of my life, and I'm so excited for you, Paul," she says to me. She gives me the contact details of the person who owns the space, and we head off to have lunch at a nearby cafe. We take our seats, then order our food. "So, Paul, are you single?" she asks me. I choke a little bit, which causes me to cough. Caroline is a beautiful woman with even more beautiful heart, but she is closer to my mother's age, and I'm not into mature women. She laughs at my reaction. "Oh, Paul, you're a very nice young man, but I'm not into toy boys. I'm only asking because I wanted to set you up on a date with my daughter." You two are around the same age, and I would have loved for her to go on a date with a nice gentleman. Her ex-boyfriend was horrible, and I'm thankful that they are no longer together, but I would love for her to experience a real, genuine gentleman. And I think you're the perfect candidate, Caroline explains to me. I immediately start blushing. I had never been complimented like that before. My parents would be so proud to hear someone talking about me like that. It would show them that they did an amazing job raising me. Well, if that's the case, then set it up. I would love to take your daughter out on a date, I tell her. She flashes me a huge smile and immediately takes out her phone. Who knows, maybe you'll end up being my son-in-law, she says, winking at me. It's Friday night, and I'm at one of the most popular restaurants in the city. I am dressed in a simple white shirt with a black tie and black formal pants. Tonight is my date with Alexis, Caroline's daughter. I'm waiting on her arrival while waiting for her. The waiter asks me if I would like anything to drink so long, and I order myself a glass of white wine to help with my nerves. I hardly drink, but I'm so nervous about this date. I never dated much as a teen or when I was in college. My parents have also been nagging me about getting married since they got married super young. My mom was 21 years old and my dad was 25. I just turned 23 recently, and already my parents feel that I should be married with a pregnant wife, which I don't agree with, but I can't really express that to them because my parents have always been strict and not easy people to talk to. You must be Paul, a sweet voice says to me. I get out of my thoughts and look up. Alexis is stunning. She has long brunette hair and these beautiful green eyes. I stand up and extend my arm to shake her hand before offering to take out her chair so that she can sit. She smiles at me while I push her chair. You really are a gentleman. My mother couldn't help but brag about that, she tells me. I give her a small smile. We order our food and drink. It was awkward at first, but once Alexis got a bit more comfortable, she chatted away. She is more talkative than I am, which she doesn't seem to mind. After eating our meal, I notice that Alexis has become extremely flirty. She keeps brushing her leg on mine, giving me flirty eyes and always touching me. Yet I feel no attraction to her. I mean, she is very attractive, but I feel uncomfortable every time she touches me. I pay the bill, and as we head outside, she asks me if she can come to my apartment. Surely our amazing night doesn't have to end now, Paul, she says to me with a flirtatious smile. I agree, and we get into my car, since she had used an Uber to get to the restaurant. We then drive over to my apartment. As soon as we get in, Alexis makes herself comfortable on the couch. Paul, do you have any wine? She asks me. I nod my head and go to one of my kitchen cupboards. I always make sure I have at least 2 bottles of wine for my guests. I hardly drink, and well, I also hardly have guests. I pour Alexis a glass and give it to her. Oh, you aren't drinking? She asks me. I shake my head. I have reached my limit. I don't want to wake up with a hangover, I tell her. She giggles and gulps down her glass of wine. As time goes by, she comes closer to me and puts her hand on my leg while looking into my eyes. Within a few minutes, we are making out. After a while, we stop and she giggles again. You're such a good kisser, Paul, she tells me. I smile at her and tell her that I quickly need to use the bathroom. I get to the bathroom and splash water onto my face. That was horrible. There were literally no sparks and no attraction. Is something wrong with me? It has been a few days since my date with Alexis. She's been texting me nonstop asking when our next date, while Caroline is also telling me that Alexis can't stop talking about our date. I don't know what to do because I did not enjoy the date at all. While taking a walk, this guy stops me and gives me a pamphlet advertising a Pride Festival, which is taking place this Friday. I have begun to notice that this city really supports and embraces the LGBTQ community, something my hometown doesn't do. It wouldn't hurt to check it out and learn more about the LGBTQ community since I will be living here. Friday finally comes and I head off to the festival. The festival is so colorful and filled with so much fun. There are food stalls, music, and people. Normally, I feel super anxious around crowds, but I'm actually having fun interacting with people. Everyone is so free, proud, and friendly. I'm waiting for my hot dog when I feel a tap on my shoulder. I turn around and see that it's the guy from the art show I attended. He has this goofy wig on and his face is painted, which looks super. Fancy seeing you here, Mr. Religious, he says in a teasing manner. I know I deserve, especially with how I spoke to him about his sexuality. I was out of line for that. Hey, before we continue any form of conversation, I want to apologize for how I spoke to you that night. It was not my place to judge or question you, I say to him. No hard feelings, buddy. All is forgiven, he says to me. What is your name? I ask him. Oh, we never got to first name basis. Well, I'm Anthony, but most people call me Ant, he says to me. I'm Paul. It is nice to meet you again, Anthony, I say to him while extending my arm to shake his hand. He shakes his head and proceeds to tell me that he shakes enough hands at the firm he works at. Instead, he gives me a fist bump, which I laugh at. Wait, are you a lawyer? I asked him in shock. One of the best in the city, buddy, he says to me proudly. Wow, you don't look like a lawyer, though. Aren't lawyers always serious? I ask him. Boring lawyers, yes. And as you can see, I am far from boring, Paul, he says to me. I take my hot dog and we walk around checking out different activities going on. After a few hours, people start leaving and we also decide to head out to a nearby bar. Wait, do you drink? I don't want you feeling uncomfortable, Ant says to me. This is my first time seeing him look so serious. A drink or two won't hurt me, Ant, I say. Oh, I like this Paul, he exclaims, jumping. We agree to meet at the bar since we both came in our cars. Me and Ant are at the bar having our beers. We're talking about our lives in childhood. Ant grew up in the city and only went away from college and then law school. He is a human rights lawyer, which shocked me even more. How did your parents handle you being gay? I asked him, and he gives me a small smile. My mother told me that she had always known and she was happy that I came out to her. My father at first wasn't supportive, but he eventually warmed up to it and now he's completely cool with it, he explains to me. Your parents sound super supportive, I say while thinking about my own parents. It isn't easy for anyone to come out, Paul, especially when you don't know how your parents will react. I know I'm one of the lucky ones, he says to me. What do you mean? I ask him. There is a shelter that I volunteer at whenever you're free. I would love to take you there, he says. I would love that, I say to him. Ant, can I get some advice? I ask. He nods his head. I take a deep breath and proceed to tell him about the horrible date I had with Alexis. I honestly think something is wrong with me, Ant. I have never felt attracted to a woman, even when I was a teenager. I don't feel any chemistry or attraction to women, I explain to him. You know, Paul, I could tell that you were not living your truth from the first day I met you, but I do not want to be the one to tell you about your sexuality, because that has to come from you. But I can make a suggestion, he says. What? I ask him. Firstly, there is nothing wrong with you. Once you accept your truth, you will realize that. Secondly, would you mind going out on a date with a coworker of mine? He says. As I'm about to respond, he cuts me off. My coworker is a guy, a very nice, handsome chap who is gay. I'm not saying that you have to, but I think you should just try it and see how it goes, he says. I don't know whether it's the beer or the little excitement I have, but I agree to go on a date with Ant's coworker. It is the night of the date with Ant's coworker, Steve. We go out to his nice little Italian restaurant. Steve is very handsome. He has curly blonde hair with these eye-catching gray eyes which look blue whenever he looks into light. During the date, I found out that he's a family law lawyer and that he's very passionate about children. At some point, I find myself just gazing into his eyes as he speaks and notice that he has very nice lips. I pinch myself because this is the first time I have ever felt so attracted to someone. It's like I could listen to him for hours on hours. We finish our dinner and we head out of the restaurant. Steve, would you like to head over to my apartment? I ask him. I see him smile a little bit and quickly assure him that it's only for drinks because I do not want the night to end. He laughs and agrees. We head over to my apartment, and while we are walking into my apartment door, I find myself holding his hand and I instantly feel fireworks. Just as we are about to get to my door, he stops and kisses me. Now that is what I call a passionate kiss. I didn't want it to end at all. Paul, what the hell are you doing? Screams a familiar voice. I immediately turn around and see my younger sister Sarah staring at me in absolute shock and disgust. Sarah, this isn't what it looks like, I say to her, full of fear and embarrassment. Are you kissing a man? Mama and Papa will definitely be disgusted and disappointed in your behavior, Paul, she exclaims in anger. Sarah, wait, let's go inside and talk about this, please, I plead to her. She shakes her head. I never thought you would ever be such a sinner, Paul. You just committed a horrible sin, she yells. This is ridiculous. Your brother is a grown man and makes his own decision. And also being attracted to someone of the same gender is not disgusting, Steve says to my sister. Even though it's sweet that he is trying to help me, but now isn't the time. Steve, I think you should leave, I say. He raises his eyebrows at me and I can see disappointment in his face. All right, call me once you are not embarrassed about who you are, he says before walking away. He will definitely not be calling you. You're a bad influence, Sarah screams at her. I tell Sarah to stop screaming and unlock my door. She follows behind me, fuming with anger. This is why you left home, Paul? To go exchange saliva with men? She yells at me. I feel the tears in my eyes as my sister insults me. She tells me that she's going back to the hotel and will be informing our parents about my sinful behavior. I try to stop her from leaving, but she rushes out of the apartment, and I am too distraught to run after her. I take out my phone and call Anne, who immediately rushes over. After hours of trying to calm me down, I explain everything that happened. Well, at least your family will now know the truth and you don't have to hide it, Aunt says to me. I glare at him. My parents aren't like yours, okay? They won't accept this and I can't disobey them, I say. So because your parents are homophobic and you're scared of their rejection, you're going to live your whole life lying, not only to them, but yourself. Paul, that isn't fair to you, Ant says to me. I'm not going to hell over these weird feelings, I snap at him. Ant shakes his head. You sound exactly like my ex, and that guy ruined me because he had the same mentality you have, Ant says to me. I look at Ant and I can see the hurt in his eyes. This is the first time he has ever mentioned his ex. I was with him for 5 years, but he never publicly claimed me. Hell, he wouldn't even go out in public with me. He always told me that I was embarrassing and that I was too gay for his liking, Ant explained to me. I can see that he's fighting back tears. He would verbally and emotionally abuse me, make me feel bad for being proud of my sexuality, while he was ashamed of his. He would tease me in front of his friends, yet claim that he really loved me. But who destroys a person that they love, he asks. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, Anthony, I say. Just because I am proud and confident in my identity, it doesn't mean that I have not been through hell, Paul. I may not have received hell from my parents, but I received it from someone I dearly loved, he says. Then why continue being gay if it comes with all these bad things? Why not be straight and normal, I ask. Being gay is normal, Paul. There is nothing wrong with falling in love with someone of the same gender. The same way some guys develop feelings for girls is the same way we develop feelings for guys. The sooner you learn to accept yourself and your sexuality, the better, he says to me. I look down at my phone and see that my parents are calling me. I switch off my phone because I already know that Sarah had told them what she had just seen. I get what Aunt's saying, but it just feels like there's so much bad that comes with being gay, even though being with Steve was so amazing and natural. I know that my parents or family would never accept it. Family is everything, and I can't lose them over this. A few days pass, and I'm with Anthony at his shelter that provided a safe haven for teens who have been kicked out of their homes due to their sexuality. Hey, Aunt, regarding the conversation we had yesterday, I think you should go see a therapist or a counselor. What you went through must have been traumatic, and I think to start your healing journey, you need to talk to someone, I suggest to him. He smiles at me and tells me that he doesn't need therapy because everything is now sorted. I ask him how, and he tells me that my ex came over last night and apologized for everything, so we have decided to give things another try. I'm taken aback by the statement that he made. Aunt, do you really think that's a good idea? I mean, this is the guy that destroyed your self-confidence and self-love for yourself, I say. Don't be jealous that things didn't work out with you and Steve, he says while rolling his eyes at me. Jealous? Anthony, that man made you feel worthless and would insult you every damn day. You said so yourself that he destroyed you, I say to him. People change, Paul. Please stop trying to get involved in my love life, he says. I shake my head because my gut feeling is telling me that this will not end well. A few weeks pass by and Anthony has been avoiding me. He and his ex-boyfriend got back together and we got into a huge argument about it, mainly because I feel that he's making a big mistake. The way he went back to his ex with no hesitation. All his ex-boyfriend did was apologize and stated that he has changed. I don't trust him, especially after everything Aunt had told me about him. One sunny Sunday afternoon, I am busy painting a picture that will be part of my art gallery opening, since I finally got the space that Caroline showed me. I hear a knock on my door and the knocking gets more aggressive. I go open my door to find my parents. Why aren't you answering our calls? My mother yells. My parents enter my apartment and I can see their anger on their faces. Mom, Dad, I really do not want to deal with this right now. I'm already going through a lot and have my opening coming up, I say to them. Maybe if you didn't spend so much time kissing men, you wouldn't be so stressed, son, my father says to me. I shake my head. Normally, I would be begging and pleading for their forgiveness immediately, but today I feel different. I feel more confident. Anyways, we won't be wasting your time. We came to give you an ultimatum, my mother says to me. We won't punish you for your sinful behavior if you promise to never do such again, but you have to move back home so that you can study to be a pastor, so that when I retire, you can lead the church, my father says to me. The city is too worldly, Paul. You do not belong here. I never should have allowed you to move after graduation. Look at the evil things you are now doing, my mother says. I'm not leaving, and I'm not going back to be a pastor. That isn't my dream, I tell them. They look at me in shock. I guess they're so used to me being obedient, but not this time. Mom, Dad, I'm gay. I'm attracted to men, and that is who I am, I tell them. No, you're not, my mother screams. Paul, if you do not start packing your bags, we will disown you, my father yells. I shrug my shoulders and simply say, okay. I go continue with my painting as they look at each other in confusion. If you do not want to accept me for who I am, this is okay, but I'm done trying to live up to your expectations. I want to live my truth, I say. My father threatens to cut me out of his will, and I just shrug my shoulders again. Don't you ever call us or come back home after this. You're no longer my son, he yells at me. As my father continues to throw threats at me, I receive a call and it's the hospital telling me that Anthony had been badly beaten. I rush out, leaving my parents in my apartment. What the hell happened? I finally get to the hospital and the doctor gives me a brief on Ant's injuries. He tells me that I can see him. I go into the room Anthony is in and he is in pretty bad shape, but at least he can talk. I didn't expect you to come, but I didn't know who to call, Ant says to me. I'm glad you called me. We're friends, I reminded him. How can you still consider me a friend after the way I treated you, he asks. The same way you forgave me for the ignorant comments I made the first day we met, I say. He smiles at me and tells me that his ex-boyfriend had done things to him. Apparently, his ex felt that Ant had embarrassed him in front of his friends, so when they got to Ant's place, they started arguing, and then his ex got physical. I hope you get a restraining order against him, I say. Ant nods his head as tears roll down his face. I hug him and tell him that we shall get through this together. It's been a few months since the incident with my parents and Ant's fight with his ex. Anthony is doing really well now. He got the restraining order against his ex and also pressed charges. He is also in therapy and he says that it's been helping him a lot, especially because he didn't realize how much he was actually keeping inside. He told me that he isn't ready to start seeing anyone seriously yet, but he is definitely interested in going out and meeting new people. I, on the other hand, have been seeing Steve for a few weeks now. We aren't exclusive yet, but it's heading there. My sister came to apologize to me a few days, and she's also apologized to Steve. She also told me that she is happy that I'm living my truth and wants to still be a part of my life, even though our parents had disowned me. Yep, my parents cut me off completely. They blocked my number and informed me that I am no longer welcome in their home, which I don't care about. I'm happy, and I'm finally living my truth. The end. Do you agree with parents disowning their children? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our rainbow forest and stay wholesome.